if you wasted your whole budget on fights, maybe you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing. Maybe you were focusing on the wrong thing if your whole budget went to spaghetti monster fights and not genuine, natural story progression and character development. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Minu's Mortuary. I'm your host Minu, wearing my one of my favorite comfy shirts, dead inside. Oh, hold on, let me just lift this up here. But caffeinated. Anyway, for today's episode, I want to talk about Parasyte the Grey, the show that just came out this year, 2024, and it is basically first of all, Korea. They've been really killing it these last few years, but it is a Korean live action. I don't know if I want to say adaptation, but I'll say a Korean live action adaptation of the anime Parasyte. It feels like it does kind of want to be its own thing, so it feels weird to say like it's a live action adaptation. But as I've explained to many people who I've spoken to before about live action, this is not a Western remake. This is not some whitewashed American, we was just playing around with somebody else's IP situation. I know we have a history of doing that. This was made in Korea. So I already knew that they were not going to disrespect it the way American Hollywood or whoever does these live action adaptations, how we do it, because we be fucking up. Like, we be playing on people's names when we try to remake an anime. Like, it's always ugly. Death Note comes to mind. I think that was a Dragon Ball Z remake that we had done at one point. There's always this issue every time somebody tries to do Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, we be playing in their face. Like, we be playing with people's IP, and this is not that, okay? This was made in Korea. So these are Korean people, Korean directors, Korean writers. I did not expect them at all to disrespect Parasyte's IP. So just telling you all of that, the heads up, okay? It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Overall, they did a thing. They did something. It's not what I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to give you points for that. Was it amazing? No. Is it worth watching? Yes. I did enjoy watching it. And I'm going to break down all of my feelings and emotions and thoughts on it in a second. So basically the show Parasyte itself centers around a guy named, I might be pronouncing his name wrong. Give me 1 second. Izumi. I know it's Izumi something. Izumi Shinichi. Parasyte the anime centers around a guy named Izumi Shinichi being his first name. And basically there's this event that randomly happens one day where all of these alien eggs fall from the sky, and out comes these little larva parasites, and they immediately attack humans. They take over their brain, or they replace their brain. And then they are like walking around and they look human like everyone else, except the fact that they now have the ability to morph their head into like tentacles or whatever they needed to, basically, in order to attack and eat humans. All of the parasites have the same goal, to eat humans. And so that is basically that part of the story. Shinichi is unique in the sense that when the parasite tries to get to his brain, it doesn't make it. It ends up being stuck in his hand, and it takes over his hand. He ends up naming it Migi because it's his right hand. And what follows is part like comedy in the sense of an alien trying to understand humans, and then part like super drama, horror elements, because I mean, these are like human eating monsters with human faces, and they are very interesting in the way that they are like learning about humans and adapting to humans and understanding their behavior and all that. So I will say just about the anime itself, I did feel like there was some times when it dragged on a little bit. You know, did that it could have been condensed a little bit, it could have been shortened, and I did feel like there were other areas where they could have developed it more. But ultimately, it was one season. I think it was like 24 episodes. I think it was fine for what it was doing, especially at the time that it came out. I kind of watched this after watching Attack on Titan, and I could definitely see the influences and some of the storylines, especially when it comes to the whole who's the real monster situation. But overall, I liked Parasite, the anime. I thought it was pretty good. So when I saw there was a Korean adaptation, keyword Korean, okay, because they've been killing it lately. When I saw that was a Korean adaptation, I was like, okay, this might be good. I was not expecting it at all to be bad in any way because, again, it was a Korean adaptation and they are closer to, the storylines, the cultural implications of everything. And they also seem to have a good understanding of the source material. When it came to, if it was something where they were like, ooh, Hollywood's putting out a Parasite live action, I'd be like, oh God, no, please stop. Like, I swear if Hollywood just don't leave Asia alone as a whole. Every time I turn around, they trying to take some stuff and it's always bad. It's always disrespectful. Please stop making live action adaptations of anime. But I noticed right away from the trailer that they were trying to do things a little different. And now this is not the first live action adaptation of Parasyte. There is I believe it's Japanese, a Japanese live action adaptation. I can't remember if it was of the anime or if it was of the manga, because sometimes a manga will get a live action adaptation before the anime is even created. So I don't know the certain timeline, but I do remember it being ugly. And it's purely because of the CG. Like, the parasites in the anime already look weird because they are very the way they're drawn, it kind of reminds me of noodles. Like especially when you're looking at stuff with Migi and how it's like has little eyes and it's like walking around and stuff like that. It just gives me noodle consistency. Like, because there's no bones in the parasites. Like, they're just noodles basically moving around and wiggling everywhere. So they already look really weird for something that can kill you instantly. So the Japanese live action adaptation also looked weird because they were trying to keep it creepy with the technology that they had at the time to try to make it look like what it is in the anime, but it's just really, really hard because they're like noodles. It's like, think flying spaghetti monster. I feel like that's kind of like what it feels like to me when I'm looking at these parasites. So I was very interested in how the K-drama was going to handle it because, if your head turns into a noodle monster, and it's going to be hard to be dramatic. You know what I mean? But I will say I felt that it did an okay job. It did an okay job with what it was trying to do. They had their work cut out for them because, again, it's hard to make a noodle monster look scary. Just to give you the plot. So the differences between this and the anime, there's a lot of differences. Basically what it is it takes place in the exact same universe as the anime, but we are in Korea. So at the same time, all of this stuff is happening in Japan. The aliens falling, the parasites taking over people's brains. Shinichi is trying to figure out how to deal with Migi and all of that. In Korea, they have their own whole storyline because it is established in the anime that this is not just unique to Japan. It happened all over the world at the same time. So, literally, this is just telling you the story, but what happened in Korea at the time of what happened over there. So this gave them a lot of freedom to tell their own story. They did not have to copy anything from the anime other than maybe the anatomy of the parasites, the baseline of the story. Like, one day they fell from the sky, they took over people's brains, and people started turning into monsters. That's all they needed. Everything else they got to do completely differently. And that is what I like and what I would give them props for, because rather than trying to just copy something that we've already seen, both in an anime and a live action adaptation, you're doing your own thing just with the same premise in the sense that you have parasites, but it's still its own story. And I really, really appreciated that because it gives you the ability to be unique, be creative, give us something different than what we've already seen. Yes, so Parasyte the Grey, the story basically revolves around Jung Soo-in. Jung Soo-in is basically, she's a 29-year-old, and this kills me because I recognize that the actress in real life is like 32 or something, but something about her being 29 just does not fit with the way she acts in this story at all. Like she's giving 19. She's giving like 22 at the most. Like, I didn't go to college and I'm just working as a cashier at the grocery store. But she's 29. And also too, some of the issues she have just does not it just doesn't make sense for her to be almost 30 and to be having these issues. I just don't feel it. I don't feel it. Everything about the way she acts makes me think that she's much, much younger. But she is 29 and she is working as a cashier at the grocery store. And she has this whole tragic backstory where she doesn't have any friends. She doesn't do anything. She's been ostracized her whole life because when she was younger, her mother left her, and her father, who was abusive, abused her. And then I'm guessing 20 years ago, because I mean, if you look the flashback, obviously she's a child. She's not a teenager. So I would say probably 2 decades ago, she called the police and got rescued from him, and he ended up going to jail. And basically everybody shunned her for turning on her father. So she doesn't have any friends. She doesn't have any life. She probably never went to college. She just works at the grocery store. And then one day this weird guy is just trying to take some chicken or something. And he's got to get the sticker, but he doesn't get the sticker. So it turns into this little argument where she's just like, look, I need you to get the sticker. I can't scan just raw chicken. And he gets really mad. He's like yelling and screaming. He's obviously like not all there mentally. But he storms off after threatening to kill her and everybody else. And so while she's going home that night, because she works like a late night shift, while she's going home that night, he attacks her, tries to kill her, stabs her a few times. At the same time, the parasite, as she's running away from him, one of the parasites falls from the sky, lands on her, and tries to take over her brain, but it realizes that she is dying, and there's no point in taking over the brain of something that's about to die. So instead of taking over her brain, it chooses to heal her wounds instead, causing it to end up in this similar situation as Shinichi in the original show was with Miggy. Miggy could not get to the brain in time, so he had to take over where he was and then exist in Shinichi's hand. What it is with Su-In is that it is still kind of attached to her brain, but it cannot take over the brain. They have a very short window of time from when the egg thing hatches to when they actually grow to a certain stage where they can no longer take over the human's brain, and they have to just be okay with where they are. So it's like there's a very short time frame before they reach their next life stage after coming out of the egg. And so it takes over, and then it ends up killing the man who's trying to kill her. She's found later, ends up in the hospital, and they're like, yeah, we saw you got stab wounds, but they look like they healed a while ago, so you must be fine. And she's like, what? No, he stabbed me though. And they're like, these are old stab wounds. This is also where we get introduced to Detective Chul Min. And basically he's the detective who saved her when she was a child. So he's basically the only person that she cares about, or because he's the only person who she feels cares about her. So she is very connected to him, and he cares a lot about her and what happens to her. And he just feels like, this poor girl can never catch a break. People are always hurting her, abandoning her, isolating her. We also get introduced in the show to the third main character of the show is Kang-woo. And Kang-woo is basically this guy who he runs with gangs. He gets caught up in some gang nonsense and ends up on the run after trying to assassinate the leader of another gang. And so he ends up coming home to, I I can't find the name of the place, but they say it all the time. But anyway, he comes to this city in Korea to go home to his sisters. He has an older sister and a younger sister because he's trying to hide out from the gangs. They're all trying to kill him, obviously. Like his whole character arc is that he's like, a coward. He's always on the run. He's kind of rough. He, handles things with his fists. He's very full of himself. He comes home to his two sisters to stay there and lay low for a while. Unbeknownst to him, but he finds out later in the show, his older sister has turned into a parasite, and his younger sister has turned into parasite dinner. This is how he becomes enthralled, with the whole parasite situation. Obviously, Su-In comes across the other parasites, and they come after her because they're like, "Oh, you're another parasite." And so she ends up being involved with them as well. And on Detective Chul Min's side, he is obviously they're trying to investigate all of these violent crimes that seem to be popping up. And so this parasite team comes in and they reveal the existence of the parasites, and he becomes a part of their whole operation to kill all the parasites in the city. So that's everybody's storyline, right? I won't go through all of the beats of it, basically. But another thing I want to talk about with this show, and what I felt that they didn't do as well as what the anime did, is that I feel like there were times when the show was relying on me having seen the anime, because a lot of things happen really fast. Because again, it's only like 6 episodes versus the anime, which, I mean, 6 episodes, about almost an hour each. That's pretty much 12 episodes. But I think the anime was like 24 episodes, right? And like I said, there was some episodes with the anime where I felt like they dragged on a little bit. But with this show, I feel like they didn't drag on enough, because I think literally from the beginning when the eggs land, it like jumps forward a month. Like it just jumps forward a whole month. Whereas in the anime, the show takes place over several months. But in this show, it just jumps forward like a month. And now the police know about the parasites, and the parasites are already organizing, and everything's just moving, right? And there's not enough time to really explore what the parasites are, what they want, how they come to learn who they are, and how they come to find this organization. You don't really get that. Like you get you get flashbacks, right, to when certain people became parasites or when certain people met each other and stuff like that. But when it comes to the parasites, it kind of, if you haven't seen the anime, it feels like things just be happening. Like stuff just happens, and then you like, damn, they organize now? Or something happens and they're like, oh, they can change bodies. Oh, they can do this. Oh, they can't do this. Oh, they can do this. And it just kind of happens so fast. And I feel like you don't get that slow progression of getting to understand the parasites. They are kind of set up to be like a big bad. And there's moments that just do not make sense because of the way that the parasites are developed within the show. And so spoilers, I guess. But in like the last episode, Kang Woo's older sister, who's been a parasite this whole time and who killed her younger sister and only cares about, the other parasites and all of that. Like she has this moment at the end where she sacrifices herself to save Kang Woo, and she's like, I understand you now because of how you felt betrayed and like all that stuff. And she like apologizes to him before dying. And it just makes no sense because it feels like it comes out of nowhere. Like literally it's in the last episode where she's like, oh, I understand how humans feel now. I'm sorry for killing your sister. It makes no sense. It just happens way too fast. And you miss that development. I think what the anime did really well that they did not do in this show is there's a lot of communication between Shinichi and Migi, because Migi does not feel the need to hide any information from him. Obviously, they share a body. They're interested in staying alive, right? And so you get to see Migi go through this progression of, reading books all night, learning Japanese, coming to understand how humans are, understanding human impulses, human thoughts. Do I protect the human that I'm attached to? Do I, listen to him when he doesn't want me to hurt his friends? watching Shinichi make all of these impulsive, rash decisions and trying to save people, even when Migi thinks that it would be useless or it would go against their desire for self preservation. Miggy also helps in terms of like explaining how the other parasites feel and like their thought process, because a lot of the parasites do not have a sense of self preservation. They don't, they just attack because the only thing they know initially is to kill and eat humans. So they have no desire initially to hide themselves or eat in secret or learn about the humans. Like, you get to meet a lot more parasites in the anime and you get to understand like the deviations that they have. So there are some who are like, I don't care why I'm here. I don't care anything about no higher purpose. I just know I'm supposed to eat people and I'm gonna eat people and ain't nobody gonna stop me. And you see the consequences of that, of them going into crowded areas and attacking people. But then you have other parasites who develop to think like, oh, I actually want to know why I'm here and what my purpose is. And one of the parasites in the anime, like, she even goes to school and starts like learning sociology and psychology and trying to understand the human body that she has taken control of. And you just don't see that in Parasyte the Gray. You don't get the time to really like sit with those parasites to where you feel that conflict, because by the end of the anime there is a genuine conflict in with some of the parasites and some of the mutants of like, wow, like they are kind of like us. They're like humans, and they're, some of them are very sympathetic, and you don't want them to die in this war between humans and parasites. And there's all these ideologies, right? But in Parasyte the Gray, it just moves so fast, and very few of the parasites even seem important. Like, they're just kind of there, and their heads open up and they swing around like spaghetti, and then they get shot down by the parasite, the Team Gray, that is tasked with taking down the parasites. They're just kind of like fodder. They act more like, it feels more like, I don't know, zombies. Like, you just come in and you just like pew pew, you shoot them out and they're done. And they just, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like you get a lot of development with the parasites, or you feel like they just seem to be evil all the way through. Like, the main antagonist or villain of the show is like the leader of the parasites, or the pastor parasite, I guess you should call him. And his whole thing, he's just evil the whole time. That's it. He just wants to take, I guess he just wants to take over the world, which is okay, whatever. Um, and he like, and even the flashback makes no sense, because the flashback is alluding to a part of the anime where some parasites would watch TV or go on the internet in order to learn more about humans and learn how to be more human. And it's like the next day or like a few days after he becomes a parasite, he's already decided that he wants to be the leader of the country or something. Like, it's just, it's weird. And it's just like they just play him straight evil, and they play all the other parasites as either evil or just monsters that need to be shot down. And a lot of emphasis is spent on the humans, which is okay, but I just feel like the spirit of the anime gave you a lot of different parasites to kind of like latch onto and like understand, a lot of recognizable um parasites who communicated a lot. And also Miggy's whole thing of like trying to understand who he is, and should he side with the parasite, should he side with Shinichi, like understanding where the humans are coming from, understand where their parasites are coming from, understanding their intent. Like, that was another thing too, is like Miggy would often communicate the signals and information he was receiving from other parasites, because in the anime it's shown that you can feel the killing intent from other parasites. Like, that is a part of the signals that are sent off, and you know when they sense you, and they know when you sense them. And Miggy's able to explain these, and you are able to experience it with them. um and as those things develop, I think it gives so much character to the parasites to where you don't feel like they're all the way evil, versus in Parasyte the Gray, they mostly seem like they are evil. Like, even Kangwoo's older sister when she decides to go after the pastor Parasyte, it's not necessarily because she wants to help anybody. It's more so of like she feels betrayed that she saw him kill another parasite, and so she's going to kill him. Whatever else is going on after that, she doesn't care. She doesn't care that she's actually stopping him from taking over the country. She only cares that she just wants to kill him. So for her to have that moment at the end of like, I'm going to try to save these two humans, doesn't really mean anything. Or for her to not kill Kang Woo when Kang Woo tried to kill her, instead to just hold him up and be like, I understand why you feel this way now, but I'm still gonna choke you a little bit. You know, it just didn't make any sense. You didn't really feel the character development of any of the parasites. In the anime, it felt like they seemed more human. Because again, they are part human, you know, and they come to realize that they aren't very different from humans, and that's probably why they were chosen to take over their bodies. And so you just don't feel sympathetic towards the parasites in this show, and you don't feel that conflict that you feel in the anime. And I feel like that was very much lacking. Also, too, the understanding of their anatomy. I feel like you have to watch the anime to understand their anatomy, because they learn and they grow and they develop their combat skills. Like they make mistakes, right? Like they'll try to like this whole part in Parasyte the Grey where the pastor gets his head cut off, but he just jumps into someone else's body, and it's supposed to be like a oh my god moment, like they can do that. But in the anime, the first time that happens, it fails. And they, you know, and again, because it's there is trial and error, they're learning themselves in the anime. So they're learning how to be human, they're learning how to imitate humans, they're learning how to speak certain languages. And the way they learn, whether it's from books or TV shows or the internet, influences the way that they even communicate, because they learned Japanese from different sources. And so like all of that is very interesting, and it gives a variety and a diversity to the parasites that you see in the anime that you just do not see in the show. In the show, literally episode 1, it just jumps forward, and now a month later they have a church, and the pastor parasite is funny because he's like actually teaching like it's a religion. Like he's showing so much emotion for a parasite, you know what I mean? And it's just very, very interesting the way that they chose to go that route, because it felt like more of an allegory of like, I don't know, religious cults or something, than it did a thing about like what is human nature, what does it mean to be human. And I feel like you get way more of that in the anime than you do in the show. It just kind of happens, and I think it focuses more on the humans trying to understand whether or not they should just kill all parasites, or if they should be okay with this one mutant girl they found. And that just doesn't feel like, I never felt like Su-In was in actual danger. Whereas with Shinichi in the anime, I felt like there were plenty of times where he was in actual danger, where he might actually die. Because whether it was the humans or it was the parasites, like somebody was going to get this boy, because he didn't know what he was doing. He had Miggy, but sometimes he didn't have Miggy because Miggy would fall asleep. Just like Heidi in Parasyte the Grey, she can only take over for a very, very short amount of time. So she can only protect Su-In for a very short amount of time, but it never comes into play. Like there's all these times when she's like warning, look, I'm not going to be able to protect you for the next 3 hours because I need to go back to sleep. So I can't help you. And you think that that's going to put her in a situation where, oh shit, I'm in danger. Heidi can't save me. I need to figure out how to save myself. But no, she gets saved every time by somebody else who decides to sacrifice themselves for her. And not to say that people didn't sacrifice themselves for Shinichi, not as much, but there was real situations where Miggy could not help Shinichi in the anime, and he had to find out a way to save himself from a parasite that's way, way stronger than him. Or there was times when he had to figure out a way to fight with Miggy against the parasite. He couldn't just let Miggy do the whole fight himself because they were up against these increasingly stronger, more evolved parasites. And that added a lot of tension to the story. Whereas here, it felt like Heidi would say she could only be she needed to sleep for so long, but also too sometimes she would just pop back up anyway. Like she would show up when it was necessary to show up, and it wasn't a lot of times where it was necessary for her to show up. You know, most of the times when she would show up, it's either to fight or it's to give some kind of like exposition or something, and that's pretty much it. You know, like I just never felt like Su-In was in any real danger. Towards the end, I didn't even feel like Kang Woo was in any danger, which is even worse because he's the type of guy to like rush into things without fully thinking about it. And so he should have been in some danger. But that man, I don't think he got hurt the whole show. Like, I mean, it's one thing to introduce him and have him like fight off gang members with ease. But when it comes to going up against parasites, I feel like there should have been a moment where he got seriously injured for being reckless, and that would have added to his character development, but it didn't really happen. Um, Even Detective Chul Min, he has this whole thing of like he unequivocally trusts Su-In. He like is tried to play that like they try to play it off like he's having these moments of doubt, like he doesn't really know. But every time he's given information, he pretty much accepts it immediately, and he unequivocally trusts Su-In throughout everything, no matter what. You know, like he does not believe she's a parasite. But then when he's told that she is a parasite, but she's a mutant, he's like, okay, she's a parasite, but she's a mutant. And he's just like down with it the whole time. So there's no real character arc with him either. It's just kind of like he it seems like it's trying to do that, but it doesn't actually follow through with it. He doesn't ever have any moments where he genuinely does not trust Su-In and has to like betray her or turn her in or anything like that. He regularly like will hide evidence if it means that he can protect her or talk it through with her and stuff like that. And so him becoming a parasite towards the end, I'm supposed to feel bad about it, but not really, because what much was he doing? Like I get that he had this relationship with Su-In, but again, it's a relationship that they developed 20 years prior to the events of the show because she's 29. You know what I mean? There is a moment in the show that is reminiscent of a moment in the anime where to protect Su-In, Heidi puts her in a coma, and within the coma, they are in this weird smoke world where Heidi is like going through her traumatic memories, and Su-In's having these emotional moments, and Heidi is offering her the clarity that she needs to help her like get through those situations. And Heidi is coming to understand her emotions and all of those things, which I thought was really good. And I think they should have had more moments like that, because in the anime, Miggy and Shinichi had a few moments like that where Miggy would appear in his dreams, and there would be this whole thing about like, oh, this is how you perceive me, like this is what I look like to you, like just things like that. Again, giving more depth to the parasites. There's so much in the anime where the parasites are trying to figure out who they are, why they were given the directive they were given, where they came from, how could they reproduce, like is there a scientific way. There's a whole plot in the anime about what happens when a parasite gets pregnant. Is the baby a parasite, is it a mutant, is it a human, all of that. And that's just missing. That whole type of plot line is missing from the regular show. So I would say overall, because I'm getting long-winded here, overall, Parasite succeeds in doing what I think it wanted to do. I think that it really tried really hard on the special effects when it came to the parasites. I think they tried really hard when it came to, animating, not animating, but they tried really hard when it came to trying to choreograph what a fight looks like between two parasites without the medium of animation, because with the animation you can draw things so fluidly, but having to use like special effects and CGI and all of that stuff, I think they were trying really hard to not make that look silly and to try to make it look more scary. And there are some times when it looks stupid, and there are other times when it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's okay, that's fine. Um, so I definitely saw where they were trying, and I think that they did the best job you probably could do with the source material. I feel like it was lacking a lot in the parasite department. I feel like we should have spent more time with the parasites, like developing them, watching them evolve over the course, like skipping ahead a month and they've already like organized and found community and stuff. I feel like did the parasites a disservice, because for you to be using the same world as the original animation, I think you could have let that breathe more. I think you could have gave more breathing room to that storyline rather than just trying to like show it in random flashbacks of like, oh, here's a flashback of how Kang-woo's sister died, or oh, here's a flashback of how Pastor Parasite came to be. I feel like you should have just let that stuff like naturally flow in the story instead of jumping so far forward and then being like, here's a flashback, here's a flashback, here's a flashback. Um, and if it meant that the show was going to be a bit longer, like, I don't think there's anything wrong being a 10 episode show if you took the time for these parasites to develop more, if you took the time for Su-In and Heidi to communicate more. Like they established in the beginning, like she can write something, and then while she's asleep, Heidi can write a response to it. And they wrote a whole bunch of stuff like back and forth to each other in the beginning, but then it just skips forward a month and she's just working as a cashier again. And I just feel like they should have given that more time to breathe. Like they should have made us care about Heidi more. Like they give us a lot of Su-In's backstory. Of course, she's the main character, but Heidi is also the main character, and not giving her the development that she needed, not giving their relationship the development that it needed, I think was a huge misstep on their part. Because in the anime, Shinichi and Migi's relationship, how it evolves over the course of the show and how they come to genuinely care about each other, like Miggy realizes at a certain point in the show that parasites can jump from human to human, but instead of doing that, he chooses to sacrifice a part of himself in order to save Shinichi. And that's a huge thing, right? But that is developed. That is something that happens over the course of many episodes. It's not something that happens in the first few episodes of the show. Just all of a sudden, Miggy decides that he has to protect Shinichi now. You know what I mean? And even Heidi, like I would have loved to see more of that, how she's torn between these two worlds, because towards the end, the pastor parasite is like asking her like, why didn't you just join us? Like, why did you da da da? And she's like, oh, well, I knew you wouldn't accept me. I'm like, okay, but that could have been explored when it happened too. Like, she could have had this conversation with Kang-woo, or she could have wrote a letter to Su-In. Like at the very end, it's like she's like, oh, this is my first time writing a letter and all that. But not really, because y'all did the thing in the beginning where you were writing back and forth to each other and communicating like who you were. Like you even recorded a video for Su-In to see like what you looked like. So you guys had communicated before. So choosing to write a letter and send it to Kang-woo so he could read it out loud to her just seemed weird. And it just feels like they're relying on your understanding of all of this and having all of this prior knowledge and just hoping that you get connected to the characters. But I really would have liked to see Parasyte the Great stand as its own thing, because it was trying to, right? Like it was like taking place in a completely different location with completely different people, completely different storylines. It's being its own thing. But if you have to watch something else in order to pick up on a lot of the stuff that you're doing in the show, or in order to follow along with some of the plot points in the show, you have to watch a whole other show. That's not good storytelling. And maybe they were low on budget. Maybe they spent all the budget on the CGI of doing like these fights and stuff. Like that would make sense to me. if that's the reason. But if they were going to do that, then I think that they should have scaled down the plot a little bit more, because having a plot to take over as the mayor is a huge thing that also kind of sort of happens in the anime. And if they were just going to speed past that in one episode, they didn't need to do that then. They did not need to do that plot point. There are several other plot points that they could have borrowed from the anime that they could have spent their time on, and it would not have had to be rushed. But I definitely feel like there too was a need for them to do a lot more action. Which there's plenty of action in the anime as well, but there's also plenty of character development and drama, and you know what I mean? Whereas here I felt like they were like, gotta have a fight scene. Gotta have some action. Gotta bring out the CGI for the monster head. Where they were doing a lot of that. And I just felt like, I mean, it's okay, but if you wasted your whole budget on fights, maybe you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing. Maybe you were focusing on the wrong thing if your whole budget went to spaghetti monster fights and not genuine, natural story progression and character development. Because these character arcs was feeling a little short to me. Again, 6 episodes. And so I would say overall, I still think it's a good watch. I don't know if they need a season 2. If they do a season 2, because I mean, one thing I would say that I appreciate about Asian shows or Eastern shows versus Western shows, they do try to wrap up the plot in one season, as opposed to Western shows. They're relying on trying to tease you enough to get more seasons. And so they will just cliffhanger everything to try to keep people engaged so they can get more seasons. And Eastern shows don't do that. They usually do well just being a 1-season show. There's a lot of room for them to do another season here because, again, the anime was like 24 episodes. This was 6. So there's room for them to explore other plot lines, but it's just the way they ended it felt very much like, and then everyone went back to normal. Whereas the ending of the anime was more so, it just made more sense. The ending of Parasyte the Grey just feels very, very abrupt. Like they killed the pastor guy, and I guess then now there's just no more parasites, or maybe there are parasites, but we don't know what they're doing anymore because they don't follow him anymore because the leader's gone. It's kind of like, yeah, things just kind of fizzled out at the end. It felt like they were trying too hard to end it. Anyway, would I recommend you watching it? Sure. Do I think that it's an amazing show? No. Do I think that it sucks because it was a live action adaptation of an anime? No. I don't think that it sucks. I think that it's fine. And it's only 6 episodes, so go in there, watch it, see how you feel for yourself. It's not amazing, but it's not crap. It's not dog shit. You know what I mean? I think it's okay. It's okay for what it was trying to do. It's okay for what it was trying to be. And the source material that it had to work with. I think it could have been better, but it just really felt like they didn't have a budget. Some of the scenes I was looking like, you ain't had a budget. These extras not even extraing, like, so maybe if they had more budget, they could have done some more high quality things. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble about this show. I was very excited to watch it just because I did really enjoy the anime. And I wanted to see what they were going to do with it. It's not a whole disappointment. So, it's a fine way to spend a week, watch an episode a night. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.